Okay, welcome to the October version of Transaction Review and Calculator Practice. David, Vicky, great to have you on. I'm going to unmute you. Vicky, remind me where you're hailing from.
Jackson, Mississippi.
That's right. You and Cindy were on a time or two ago, I think.
Yes, yes.
Okay, fantastic. And business is still hopping along for you?
Yes, I'm loving it.
Great. So are you still looking for private money and exits on notes, or you guys are just holding for rentals, right? Rental income?
Well, we're also doing some owner financing, but yes, I'm definitely looking for private money.
Okay, well, good. Maybe one of these times we can talk a little more in depth and see if there's a fit. But okay, well, let's just get in on it. So the first thing I'm going to do is just our regular calculator practice session. So if you want to get out your calculator and follow along, or try to get the answer before I show it. So pull out your calculator. Let's say you've got a 25,000 straight note. And a straight note is a note where there are no installment payments. All the interest and principal is due at maturity, at the end. So you got to, let's just say you're going to lend someone $25,000 at 8% interest, and this is compounding, not simple interest or something else. And in 3 years, they're going to pay you back all of it, your principal plus interest. So that means there's no installments, no monthly payments. Let's figure out what's the balance due at maturity. So why don't you give it a shot and see if you can come up with a number. And if you don't have a financial calculator, you have to get one. You have to have a handheld. I really recommend the apps from in-a-day development also. And why might you do this? I do this sometimes when someone doesn't, it's a short-term thing, but they need money, but it doesn't help them if you strain their monthly budget. Let's say it's just money that they need to fix up the house because they know they're going to sell it, right? So that's a situation if I feel like there's enough protective equity there, I don't worry about it. If I'm worried about it, I won't do it because I want to know sooner than later if they're running into trouble. And when there's a monthly payment and one stops coming in, then you're alerted right away. Whereas if you have a straight note, you don't know until 3 years from now that there's a problem. So, but let's say the property's worth $100,000. If I lend them $25,000 now, they can sell it for $150,000, sometime in the next 3 years or something like that. So but they don't have income to handle a payment. Okay, so I don't know if you guys got your answers. Any of you give it a stab with your calculator? What'd you get? David, Vicky?
I am still experimenting.
Okay. So how about you?
I'm coming up with 31,400.
Fantastic. And how did you do it?
I put the 36 months,
So
8%,
NN and then 8% in interest. Mm-hmm.
and then 25,000 in PV,
Right.
and then I calculated payments, and it came out to 2133, and I don't know why I times it by 3, because I'm figuring that's yearly, so I did it by 3. So I'm
Oh,
probably doing it long version.
oh, okay. Well, how much is it per year? Like 8% interest on 25,000. Let's just get that in our mind of 25,000 times 0.08. So it should be about 2,000 a year. But why will it be a little more than 6,000 at the end of 3 years?
Because of the compounding interest.
Right. So the interest is making more interest. So we know that it's going to be 6,000 and change, right?
Mm-hmm.
So which would be 25,000 plus 6 is 31. It's got to be more than 31,000, right? So just that's a way for us to get a common sense sort of feeling for it. So I had this, and this 25,000, but in the payment I got to put zero because they're not making any installments during. They're making 36 payments of zero, and at the end so now I'm gonna solve for future value. So there we go, 31,000, 755.93. So not only 2,000 a year, but with the compounding, it got us an extra 755. So that's nice above and beyond simple interest. So anyway, any other comments, questions? Hi, Joe. Nice to have you on. We've got David and Vicky here. David from Michigan and Vicky from Mississippi. And Joe, you're from, I forget, New York or New Jersey? I always forget. New York, right?
New York.
New York. Okay. All right. Well, okay. So, and if you have any questions, but I'll try to leave the line open because that's my favorite. But let's get in. I have an example. It's a little different tonight, but something I thought was really something I wanted to share. I thought it was very educational. This week, I got an email from a note seller, and just so you guys know, on my site, people can go in, and I have this on my website that because it's been a blog for several years, it's got pretty good, I guess, SEO or search engine optimization. I sell my note. There's a page for that. And then there's this form that they can fill out right here. And then some information about, why is there a discount, blah, blah, blah. How does it work? So, and then when they fill out this form, I get an email notifying me, and so that I could follow up with them. Anyway, so he had filled out things where I have a few to sell between, they're all between this and this. So here's the email that he sent me. After I contacted him. I said, hi Don, I've provided a list of the notes available for sale. This is a split of one of the partners, and they are only selling enough notes to satisfy the breakup agreement. So what happens is one of the three partners died, and the partner's son just wants to be cashed out. And they need to raise, I found out later, they only need to raise 350,000, and because they only want to sell enough notes to get the other partner's son out of the way, because normally their whole business model is to keep the notes. So that's because they're making really good money doing it. Address is just street and zip for now. Based on price offered being at least close to something the owners would accept, we will provide a non-disclosure agreement and then follow with more information. They don't want mass shopping of the notes around, causing people to send mass emails and more mail. This has happened before, so they are being careful this time. Sorry, I'm gonna mute everyone just to keep the line clear. They want to, number one, limit the spam email to us. The email we are using will be killed after the notes are sold, and a more permanent email provided to the buyer for future business. This is how serious and how bombarded they were the last time around. This is what I really hated about the note broker world. Is it was just like a daisy chain of people sending around these notes, and if you're the buyer, you could see the same note submitted to you by like 3 or more different people. And it's just, and then there's people who are acting like they're buyers, but they're really brokering, and it just gets to be quite a cluster of a situation. So I just laughed when I read this, because this is what made me turn from never ever brokering a note again to only being the buyer and only dealing with principals, because you waste so much time otherwise. Number 2, not disclosing the addresses except to valid buyers after a non-disclosure is signed. Number 3, providing all the information that most buyers would want ahead of time. Number 4, we're advising that 100% of the buyers did not have credit checked, and we believe most are 550 to 650 would be our best guess. Base your offer on this information, and we will assist the buyer to pull credit before closing to validate. We do have right to pull credit by signed agreement, but all buyers were validated by job history, income validation. They earned 4 times the note payment, bank account validation, and criminal background clearance. So basically, credit wasn't their most important thing. They have an in-house RMLO, registered mortgage licensed mortgage originator, that did the ability to pay stuff, making sure that they have good jobs and that they really can easily afford the payment. The notes are just a small portion of notes held by our company. We are possibly interested in selling more later, but we will not work with anyone that we find who, number one, tries to contact the buyers in the homes, especially before you own the note, right? Number two, tried to pull credit checks without our permission. It's a big no-no. Sent anything to the property prior to being under contract. Can you believe people doing this? I mean, how annoying would that be? No wonder they're so paranoid. Sent this list out to more than a few qualified buyers, or sent it to other brokers that sent it out to more than a few qualified buyers. Oh my goodness. So this is what they don't want. Look, they have a ton of notes. I think they at one point had 3,000 notes in portfolio. They're just selling enough to get 350,000 right now. We don't want anyone to send our email out to anyone at all without our permission. We are not looking to have the world contacting us, wanting to know if we have other notes for sale over the next 20 years. Sorry, standard information going to a few note buyers and hopefully not many note brokers. Looking forward to your offer, respectfully. So I'm going to try to unmute everybody. So any comments, responses? Do you find that enlightening?
I understand why they're doing it.
I'm sorry, is this Vicky?
Yeah, I understand why they're doing it. It sounds like, they tried selling it before and they weren't, they probably sent it to brokers and their email got out there and everybody and their mother was trying to contact them and they wasted too much time.
Exactly. Anyone else have experience with this?
It just sounds.
Yeah, Joe or David?
Go ahead, Joe.
Actually, no, I have some, and when I was doing some brokering and some other stuff, and yeah, it's just tons of basic things. Do the same thing.
Yeah, well, I remember.
Control. The problem is that nobody has control of the note because nobody's a principal.
Right. I mean, one time in the early days, I had a note under contract and I put it out on like this America's Note Network. It's kind of like Loan MLS or something like that. And just one little note, and I really got besieged with for months afterwards with people who, there was no way, and they weren't buying. They were just trying to put the deal together. Nobody had the money in their pocket. I mean, maybe some of them did, but I never ever, I vowed I'd never do that again. It was just so horrible. It's like, yeah, no, I'm going to develop my own back pocket list of investors, and that's how I'm going to do business. I'm not going to, be in this mad game with everybody else throwing stuff around on the internet. It was just insane. Yeah. So from there, he sent me. Let's see. He sent me this PDF, which was a PDF of an Excel spreadsheet. Didn't have any identifying information, and some of it was a little funky. I mean, I would have maybe set it up a teeny bit different myself, but so basically it had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16 or 17 notes here that they would consider selling. They had, where it was. All of this stuff is in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. When they sold it, type of property, they're all single families, 3 and 2s, couple 4 and 2s, 3 and 1. They're all 3 to 4 bedroom. what the market value is now, what they originally sold for, the down payment. So the first thing I did, I go market value. So in this column, when I printed this out, just so I could give him a ballpark to see if his price expectations were something I could work with, I just said, okay, market value, and I took 65% of everything in this column, and I wrote it in and said that's my maximum ITV, investment to value. And then after that, I calculated yield. Like, here's the monthly payment, here's how many payments are left, and if the yield was better than 13%, then and it was below my max ITV. So here's he's going. Here's the principal balance on all these notes. Total 715,000. And if I take 85%, we want to sell these notes at 85%. And almost all the time, it was above. The yield was above 13%. But there was 3 of them where it exceeded the maximum ITV. It was to buy 85% of the remaining balance would get me over 65% of the value of the property. So on those ones, I opted for the partials because they're open to selling 5 or 6 year partials. And so on those, I just quoted a partial purchase at like a 12-13% yield, something like that. And he was very happy with that. But the funny thing is like just taking in this one example, and it's super hard to see. But oops. But I don't know if you can see. Let's see. But like right here, okay, for 85% for a full buyout is 27,000, but just for 60 payments, they want us to pay 34,000. So what I told him, just heads up, you got a little something wonky with how you figured your partials, because you could see he figured the partials by the number of payments, like 60 payments times the monthly payment, and that's what he's figuring as the balance of the note, which of course isn't true, because you're only going to get 41,000 if. Anyway, you can see that doesn't make sense intuitively. You're not going to pay more for 60 months than you would pay for the whole note. So I had to work with him a little on that, and he didn't seem to care much at all. But he could see that we were easily going to work together, and so we talked. So then, based on that, before our phone call, because he had made an appointment through my online scheduler, and I didn't want to waste his time, so I was ready. With something simple I'd put together myself. Here's the full, I'll pay your 85% of the UPB, the unpaid principal balance on these ones, and I'll only buy partials. And you can see that I went down. Like that one, he wanted 34, I'd go 20. No, that's something different. I can't remember. Anyway, so I told him, if you sell all these, we're looking at about that. And so he was going, okay, good. Well, I'll just let you cherry pick the ones that you want to get me to 350. So we just barely talked on the phone yesterday. He wanted to make sure. In fact, he didn't even give me his real name. He said his name was one thing, and then after it, he said, oh, well, now I know you're not a nut. And I said, actually, I am a nut. And he go, oh, you're the right kind of nut. But anyway, just to say that, rapport and building trust, you want to do business with people that you know, like, and trust. And so just having a good connection. Now, that could be just a really good thing. I mean, who knows? I mean, a lot of things that sound wonderful end up falling apart. But all you need is 1 or 2 of these kind of relationships to really, give you some volume under your business. But you have to be the kind of person who's not just out there like with the rest of the mad note brokers. You got to stand out. You got to create, your own space. Don't make it miserable for people to do business with you. But anyhow, and then after we talked, he says, well, I'll be in touch. I go, that's great. And so what I'll do, I said, are you okay with the fact that, I represent a lot of mom and pop. I'm not a big hedge fund. I don't have employees. I have a few part-time couple part-time helpers, and I'm choosing to stay that way because my passion is the mom and pop. I'm not going to write you one big check for 500,000 or 350,000. What's going to happen is I'm going to, get my close knit group of back pocket investors, many of whom bought their very first note with me, and we've been going, ever since, and they trust me and count on me, for good, safe investments. And if you're okay with that, we're going to have different names on different notes and different, arrangements on these things. It's all going to be under, my company's guidance and servicing and whatnot. But no, the servicing actually is with FCI. So the servicing doesn't even have to change, just who they're sending the payment. But anyway, I said, I'll coordinate it and won't take that long, but just so you know. And he goes, I have no problem with that at all. So we had sort of a philosophical resonance as well of creating mom and pop solutions. And so beyond the financial aspects that always need to make sense, it's really exciting when you meet people that from a philosophical or value-based level that you relate with people, because then you're like, okay, I want to do business with you. I don't even want to shop to see if I could get $1,000 more, because I want to do business with you because you're doing good things in the world, and we see eye to eye like that. So the way he's getting these notes is like he's just a master deal finder. He's got lots of bird dogs out there, stuff that Vicky and Cindy are doing, and they're just going out. He might get a property for $10,000 to $30,000, and maybe he'll put a little bit into it, and then he's selling it for double or more and carrying the paper. And the way that he says, one of the things I do that I haven't seen anyone else do is I get people married to the property. And I go, how do you get people married to the property? Because I said, what? I said, with three exceptions, all of your notes, they're like 5% down payments, which is kind of light. And he says, well, in this market, there's a lot of people with good, steady jobs, but they just can't put together a ton of money generally. And I find other ways to get them emotional equity other than just the cash out of pocket. And I said, really? Well, how are you doing that? And that's what he called being married to the property. So he always does the big repairs, but he leaves the little stuff, like he'll do the roof, the plumbing, the electrical, the water heater, whatever like that. But he leaves other things that are mandatory for them to be done, like a performance deed of trust. So they'll give him like 2 months where you gotta, paint, put new carpet, fix the sink, whatever it is. They've got these things they have to do, or else it's basically like defaulting on a payment. And so now what you have is people who, they not only see the money, feel the money out of pocket that they put down, but they look around and they see their own, sweat equity into the property. And he said that makes a huge difference. So he's got a team of people, and he's a title guy, and he can get a lot of stuff done for really cheap, and he knows what he's doing. So he also wants to explore borrowing money to buy borrowing the $10,000 or $15,000 to buy these things, that then gets left in place, and he wraps it with an owner carry. So, I mean, there's lots of chances for little loans paying 10 to 12% for some of my people in my community too. So that's where one good connection can lead to a ton of business, actually more than I could probably handle. That's why I'm getting more and more help, to process the note things. But anyway, I just thought that was kind of interesting to share. I hope that meant something to you guys. But this is kind of just how real world business is happening. Anyone else have a comment, a question? We're about 5 minutes to the end of our time here. Is there anything that anyone else has that they want to bring up? Something that you're working on?
I've got a question, Dawn.
Yeah. And is this Dave? I'm sorry.
This is Dave, yes.
Yeah.
Speaking of underwriting, okay,
Yeah.
like the gentleman is doing 95% loan to value, and Uh, what, in your opinion, is the best way to underwrite? As you know, Sean and I, have
Yeah,
a model, working, growing model that's similar to this gentleman, buying low and wrapping,
right.
hopefully, with the underwriting process. What is the best method, or should we go to a broker and strike a deal for them to check the credit and run the ratios and that type of thing? What is the best method for that?
Yeah, I think, I mean, as I take a pulse, and sorry, I'm just gonna, there's some noise happening. Um, as I take a pulse with people across the board, what I see most people feeling, there's some people that say, "Oh, this isn't even good enough," but I don't know what else you can do. Most people consider it good enough if you get a licensed mortgage originator to to run the file, and at the very least, you really have to document very well their ability to pay according to the guidelines set out by the CFPB. And there's also, can't be all the different things like a fixed interest rate for such and such, and it can't be, so much above prime or whatever, that thing is. And as I like, they don't like the interest rate to be, some people say they won't write it above 10%. Other people, like this gentleman, he wrote loans frequently up to 11 and a half, even 12. And for their licensed mortgage originator, that, they felt like that was still well within their guidelines with state and federal. But it's considered, yeah, proper. I would say most people figure if you get an RMLO to do it, um, you're doing the best that you can. I was listening in on a conference. I forget their names now. I think it's Cash Flow Depot people. And there was a guy there that his whole business was to consult with mobile home park owners. And it's getting to the point where if you really want to abide by the letter of the law, it can be extremely burdensome. Meaning, someone, uh, yeah, who, you have to underwrite the file, but then you have to have a licensed servicer take care of it. And they were also suggesting, and I haven't had this told to me by anyone else, that even just to own a note, you need to be licensed. So, I mean, things are trending, or they're wanting them to trend, it seems like, in a very oppressive direction. But most people that are doing, this hands-on in the trenches day in, day out, they sleep at night just fine if they get someone to, do the ability to pay and write the notes according to the basic guidelines that the CFPB had before that had set out. So it's probably a really good idea. I mean, that one that we're doing, are you involved in that one that we just closed on Clariola? I hope we closed it today.
It did close today, yes.
Okay, gosh. On that one, I mean, the sort of guidelines are in place, but we structured that so there's no exposure, there's no note and deed of trust to like an owner occupant. That is, for all intents and purposes, an investor loan. And then because we took title in a trust, or at least it's supposed to be put in a trust as soon as Sean can get it around, and then he's basically getting a lease, an option to buy the beneficial interest in the trust. So
Mhm.
at the point at which he can pay it off. So those are ways that I can sort of mitigate, exposure to things, still following the reason why they have the rules there. It's to set people up for success, right? But
Yes.
but I don't like being. I like it if I can find ways to just not even show up on the radar if I can. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think it might be as simple as, forging a relationship with a mortgage broker and,
yeah,
you know,
just
uh,
asking them what you'll charge to underwrite my
yeah,
file. And
right.
I'm hearing everything from 350 to like 500 is pretty standard. Maybe in some areas it's more expensive. But in the early days of this stuff, when the Dodd-Frank thing, everyone was so scared you couldn't at all find a mortgage broker willing to risk their license for this, and not even an attorney. If they knew about Dodd-Frank, they were afraid to do it. If they didn't know about Dodd-Frank, they didn't care. But now everyone's like, oh, this is a good profit center. So now they've just as they've come out with more of the specifics of the guidelines and expectations, that you shouldn't have too much trouble finding a mortgage broker who will do this for a flat fee. And of course, that makes it more expensive for the buyer because now that's another fee that they got to cover. But yeah. But and then he won't service his own notes. So he's got FCI. He says, I went through a couple of bad ones, but FCI has been really great and not that expensive. And so that's a guy who's was up to 3,000 notes, and they've gone down, and now they're coming back up again. So anyhow.
That's the other part of compliance, is the servicing part.
Yep.
Yeah. You can have a lot of exposure with if you're doing it yourself and you don't necessarily know what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And even if you know what you're doing, if you get to the point where you need to foreclose, who's to say? They might say, oh, no one's allowed to foreclose unless if they don't have a license to have had the note in the first place or something. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I'm trending. I mean, I still, from the early days, I learned a lot from servicing my own notes, and that taught me a lot about the business, is just knuckleheading my way through that whole process. But it's more of a liability. So as stuff comes up, I'm just, if it's a consumer loan and owner occupied, I'm just trending to just not touching those at all in terms of servicing myself. So, but the stuff that's investor related, it's not a big deal. At least I don't know that it is. But the consumer stuff, yeah. But anyhow, well, great call. Thank you for the question and for the participation, and appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you next time. If you have anything you want specifically covered, some sort of training or one piece you can't get or a deal you don't help, please email me and we'll be sure to cover it in one of these sessions. I really value the interaction. So anyway, thanks for showing up. Appreciate you. Have a good night. Talk soon.
Thanks, Don.
All right. Bye-bye.